ASMR. I'm Nicole. Thank you so much to everyone who has tuned in to this channel. I truly appreciate you. And if you're new here and you enjoy whispered true crime, please consider subscribing to the channel. I post 2 times a week, on Monday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I recommend using headphones if you would like to hear the gentle mic brushing. Now let's get right to tonight's case. Tonight we will be traveling to Illinois. Shout out to all my friends in Illinois. Tonight we will be covering the 2007 case of Drew Peterson. Not to be confused with Scott Peterson, a completely different case which I did cover. And not to be confused with Michael Peterson, another crime case which I did not cover. Yes, there are lots of Petersons in the true crime world. But before I get started, I will mention my nails. I had a request to wear nails for a video. I have done it once in the past on this channel, so I am honoring that request today. Let me know what you think. I generally don't put on nails for these videos simply because it's just one more thing to do, you know what I mean? Because I don't actually wear any kind of nails in real life. I just put them on for videos. If you watch my main channel, my ASMR addiction, I often wear long and sometimes crazy nails in those videos. So anyway, let's get to the case. Starting with Drew Peterson. He was born on January 5th, 1954 in Bolingbrook, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago. He graduated from high school in 1972 and then joined the Army. In the mid-70s, he moved to Falls Church, Virginia to become a military police officer. And then in 1977, he returned to his hometown of Bolingbrook, Illinois, where he became a local police officer, and ultimately he would wind up being employed there for the next 30 years. Now, he was originally assigned to the narcotics squad, and in 1979 he received a Police Officer of the Year award. He was doing so well, and he was so highly respected. But that would not always be the case. He became more of a problematic officer as the years passed, and he moved from position to position. Ultimately, he would retire in November of 2007 at age 53 with the rank of sergeant, at which time he was given a tax-free pension of $79,000 a year. So let's go back in time now and talk about his private life, specifically his marriages. He had four marriages, okay? And he also had several serious relationships in between some of those marriages, but we're just going to focus on the marriages because that is enough. So his first wife, her name was Carol Brown, and they met in high school. They even went to the prom together. They married in 1974 while he was still in the military. He was 20. But they divorced 6 years later because Carol found out that he was cheating on her. But they did have 2 children together, 2 boys, Stephen and Eric, and she kept custody of the boys. So 2 years after their divorce, it was time for Drew to remarry. It was 1982, and his second wife was Victoria, or Vicky, Connolly. She had an 8-year-old daughter from a previous relationship, and the daughter lived with them during their marriage. So Drew and Vicky stayed together for 10 years. And during that time, she alleged that he was physically and emotionally abusive to her. She said he threatened that he, quote, knew how to kill her and make it look like an accident, end quote. Don't forget, he was a cop, so he could know certain things, you know. And her daughter, Lisa, who lived with them from age 8 through 18, said she also experienced physical and emotional abuse from Drew. And he would always claim he was just being a strict disciplinarian. That was all. So ultimately, they broke up when Vicky discovered that he was cheating with a woman named Kathleen Savio. That was in 1992 when they divorced. So those first 2 wives probably consider themselves very lucky that they got out, okay? So he married his third wife just a few months after the previous divorce. He was not wasting any time. So this wife was Kathleen Savio, the same woman who he had cheated with on his second wife, okay? Now, Kathleen Savio was born on June 13th of 1963 in Glendale Heights, Illinois. She was a bookkeeper. So together they had 2 sons. Now remember, he already has 2 sons from the first marriage, okay, but now he has 2 more. Thomas in 1993 and Christopher in 94. But reportedly their marriage was volatile and violent. After their sons were born, Drew started treating her horribly, calling her terrible names like fat and ugly, and but the hospital felt that there was something more to it. And they notified the police, but nothing came of the incident. Now, don't forget, he works for the police. He is the police, okay? So they called the police station where he works. Do you think anything would come of it? No. That's quite a situation. So during that marriage, Drew was away from home a lot. And in October of 2001, Kathleen received an anonymous letter. And this letter said that Drew was dating a teenage girl. And that everyone knew about it. Like, she was being made a fool of. Everyone knew except her. This was no secret. It said, quote, village officials, mayor, trustees, and everyone at the police department have complete knowledge of this situation. It has been an ongoing joke within the department, end quote. So she's getting cheated on and everyone at the police station is laughing about it. But somebody felt they had to let her know. And the letter said that because Drew had political connections, he was being protected. Okay. So she confronted him, and Drew denied everything, of course. And here's the sickest thing. Kathleen didn't even know that at night when the family went to bed upstairs, he would sneak his teenage girlfriend into the basement and they would sleep together there while the family slept upstairs. And then she would leave in the morning before anyone saw. Isn't that crazy? Like, that is so bold. He really didn't care that much. You know, he could have easily been caught, but it seems like he didn't care. So, police had responded to 18 domestic disturbance calls at their house between 2002 and 2004. Now, who do you think the police are who respond to the calls? That's right. His buddies, his pals, okay? And it would turn out that both Drew and Kathleen would be named as aggressors in these incidents. Kathleen wound up getting arrested 2 times. Charges were dropped ultimately, but Drew was never arrested, never charged. Interesting, right? Now, there was one incident where they had separated. They weren't divorced, but they had separated. It was July of 2002. And Kathleen reported that Drew broke into the house and forced her at knife point to sit on the steps for 2 hours while he threatened to kill her if she dared to move a muscle. She said that he had found out he was going to have to pay child support, and he was really angry about it. Well, what did he think? He thought he wasn't going to pay child support. Like, please. So she reported this to the police, but Drew denied most of it. He said that the meeting was prearranged. You know, they had decided that they would meet on that day at that time, and it was actually a friendly meeting. None of this knife point business. And actually, he said Kathleen exposed herself to him during that meeting, asking if he, quote, missed this. Like, did you miss this? Like, she really did that, okay. And they believed it. how to manipulate the system, and his next step is to take my children away or kill me instead, end quote. Well, I guess that did not do anything for her. She considered filing an order of protection against him, but she decided against it because she didn't want anything to happen that would make him lose his job, because the family needed his salary. You know, she did need the child support, and if there was any alimony or whatever. She just didn't want him to get in so much trouble that he would lose his job. So that was that. But she made sure that everyone knew she was afraid of him. She told her family that he would kill her and make it look like an accident. But do you think it mattered that that is what people thought? It really didn't. It's like he was untouchable. So they had a preliminary hearing regarding the divorce, and it said that Kathleen would likely get the house. She would get child support, maintenance, and a percentage of his pension. There were also other assets, such as a bar that they owned together. Like a bar, like a pub, you know what I mean? There were vehicles, there was cash and investments. It all needed to be, shared. And Drew was very against all of this. He absolutely did not want to share anything or lose anything that he believed was his. But anyway, the divorce was finalized on October 10th of 2003, but the finances were not settled yet, okay? Drew was now 49, and he got married for the 4th time a week after the divorce was finalized. 1 week. And the hearing for the division of marital property was going to take place in April the next year. So it's now October 2003. The hearing will be in April 2004, okay? Remember that date. April of 2004. It is important. And if I forget it, at least you'll remember it. So who was this new bride of his? Well, she was that teenager that he was bringing to his house in the night. She was now 19, okay? She was a hotel receptionist named Stacy Ann Cales. She was born on January 20th, 1984 in Downers Grove, Illinois. She had a very rough childhood. Both of her parents were alcoholics, and they had a very tumultuous relationship. Her sister had died in a house fire just weeks before she was born, so Stacy never met this sister, but the family was obviously pretty unstable after having just lost one of their own in a fire. And then she was born, Then another sister died as a baby of SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, when Stacy was 3. So now her mom and her dad had lost 2 children in the period of about 3 years. And her mother, whose name was Christy, had become seriously depressed, and her alcoholism had taken control of her life entirely. divorce. I mean, he wasn't doing so great, but he was doing a lot better than Christy was. And he couldn't take it anymore. The last straw was when Christy set fire to his clothing and smashed his windshield. So, they divorced and he was granted full custody because, in truth, she didn't even show up for the hearings. So after the divorce, the family moved around a little bit here and there, and money was a big problem. They never had enough. The father sometimes had to leave the kids alone, I guess for work. I don't really know exactly why, but he did. He would leave them for up to 3 weeks at a time, and they would have to take care of themselves. So the kids became very, very close. They were there to raise each other, so to speak. Eventually, though, they moved back to the Chicago area, and their mother, who was still there, returned to their lives, still in an in and out sort of fashion, like she was still dealing with alcoholism. And then one day, when Stacy was 16, her mom said she was going out. It was either to church or to visit a friend. It's unclear which it was. And she never came back. She disappeared forever. And her family believes that she might have been murdered by her live-in boyfriend at the time. But we don't know. So you can imagine the state of mind of Stacy to some extent, right? And she had gotten a job at this motel when she was 16, and that is when she met Drew Peterson, because he was a police officer who would patrol that area, you know, and he would stop in at this motel to make sure things were okay late in the evening, which is not unusual. You know, a lot of weird stuff goes on in motels, okay? So police are often called to motels for all kinds of things. So he had stopped by, and that was where he had met her. And I guess he liked her a lot. He started stopping by more and more, and next thing you know, they were dating. Now, I did check the age of consent in Illinois, and it appears to be 17. So I don't know if any laws were broken or anything regarding that. Maybe he waited, I don't know. So, as I said, she was 16 when they met, and now finally they got married when she was 19 and he was 49. Oh, that's an age gap. She moved into a house with Drew in Bolingbrook. It was less than a mile from Kathleen's house. Okay, so he got a new house very close to his previous wife because maybe he wanted to live close to his kids. And together, Drew and Stacy had 2 more children, a son in 2003 and a daughter in 2005. So he has now 6 children of various ages with 3 different mothers. So Stacy had begun studying to become a nurse at Joliet Junior College. So that was her goal. And she had several cosmetic surgeries. I don't know whose idea it was, but she did. She's pretty young, remember? But she got liposuction, a tummy tuck, and breast augmentation. Drew had asked the surgeon to give her double D size implants, but the surgeon refused to because of Stacy's small frame. I guess it would be too much for her to carry, you know? was cheating on his third wife with her, which is another red flag, but whatever. So Drew started becoming controlling and jealous. He was obsessed with the idea that Stacy might be cheating on him. He would come home during his night shifts thinking he might walk in on something. You know, he's like, I'm home, you know, do you have somebody here? And she didn't. If she went to the grocery store, he would check the timestamp on the receipt to make sure it lined up with the story she had told, you know. He would follow her when she left the house. And her sister, one of her sisters named Tina, was diagnosed with cancer. And Stacy started going to visit her a lot and help care for her a lot, spending a lot of time there, and he was not so sure if that's really what she was doing. So one day when she got home from taking care of her sister, allegedly he made her strip down so he could, I don't know how to say this nicely, smell her to see if possibly she had had relations with somebody. Can you imagine? In late February of 2004, Drew took out his 2 kids from his previous marriage, his marriage with Kathleen. He took them out to the aquarium, and then when he got back to Kathleen's to, you know, give the children back for the night, nobody was there, nobody was answering. He tried calling, no answer. He's like, oh whatever, okay, I'll take you guys home to my house and we'll try again tomorrow. They went home. Next day he goes back. Still no answer. Still no one answering the phone, answering the door. He talks to the neighbors. Have you seen her? Do you know this, that? Nobody knows where she is. What's the deal? Where could she be? So he hires a locksmith because she changed the locks, even though the house wasn't officially hers yet because they didn't have that hearing yet. I remember the date. The hearing was April 2004. Okay, right now. Today, the day that he is there, standing at the door, it is March 1st, 2004. Okay? He gets a locksmith to open the door. And then he says to the neighbors, you guys, can you go inside? Because I don't want to go in there and then she'll claim that I moved stuff around or took something. I don't even want to go inside. So can you guys go inside, you know, and see if she's there or what's the deal? So in go the neighbors. They look around. Finally, they found her. She was in the master bath, you know, the bathroom off the master bedroom. She was unclothed. She was laying face down in the bathtub. There was no water in the bathtub, and she was clearly deceased. Supposedly there was no bath mat. There wasn't a towel right near the tub. It didn't look like somebody was about to take a bath or, you know, in the bath. It just didn't look like it. And I will say, when I said the bathtub was empty, it's stressed in everything you read and everything you watch. It was a dry bathtub, but it would make you think, oh, she was in a bathtub with no water. I have to assume the water had drained over the 2 days that she was laying there. You know, that's what I have to assume because nobody's saying it. There must have been water there because the coroner decided it was an accidental drowning. The end. No foul play. We're not investigating anything. This is simply a by a coroner's jury that included a police officer who personally knew Drew, and he assured the other jurors that Drew was a good man who would never hurt his wife. And after she died, all the marital property went right to Drew because the division of the marital property had not yet taken place. So if she had died a month later, things would have been different. And Kathleen had a $1 million life insurance policy benefiting her sons, who were underage. So Drew, as the custodial parent, got to manage those funds as he saw fit. You know, he could spend them on stuff for them, right? And less than a month after she died, he put her house up for sale. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that in my opinion, but he didn't mention her death to the new owners. He just claimed that he was only selling this house due to the fact that his children enjoyed swimming in the pool at his other house down the street. So he wasn't saying anyone died, anything bad happened there. And since it wasn't called a murder, I don't think you have to disclose that. And Stacy, his fourth wife, she legally adopted those two boys, and she treated them as if they were her own. She was a wonderful mother to all of the children. She really was. But their marriage was not good either, because why would it be? About 4.5 years after Kathleen died, it was October 26th, 2007, and Stacy told Drew she wanted a divorce. She put his clothes in a bunch of boxes and asked him to leave. But why would he? He refused. So she called a lawyer named Harry Smith. He was the same attorney who had represented Kathleen Savio in her divorce from Drew. And she asked this lawyer if she would get more money from Drew in the divorce because of what she knew about how Kathleen died. What did she know? The lawyer told her no, and also said he wouldn't be able to represent her because he had handled the previous case. So she didn't say that anything did happen to this lawyer. She just asked if she would get more money because of what she knew. I mean, it seems clear, but she didn't say anything really specific, okay? So one day later, October 27th, her sister Cassandra came over for dinner. And when she was leaving, Stacy said to her, quote, "I love you. If anything happens to me, he killed me. It wasn't an accident," end quote. That's a terrible thing to hear from your sister. Well, the next day, Sunday, October 28th, 2007, guess what? Stacy Peterson went missing. Her sister Cassandra couldn't find her. Couldn't get in contact with her. So she right away made a report to the police. It was October 29th now. She spoke to Drew. She went to the house looking for Stacy. Drew was there. She spoke to him. He said Stacy left on her own voluntarily. He said that Stacy had called him at 9 p.m. on Sunday, the night before, to tell him that she had left him for another man and that she was dropping her car at the airport and he should come pick it up. Which he did. He went and picked it up, which explained why her car was still got the state police in on it, and the FBI, because yeah, Drew is the primary suspect and he works for Bolingbrook Police Department. Search warrants were carried out on the Peterson property, including seizing all of his firearms and both his and Stacy's cars. And it was around that time when Drew Peterson announced that he would be retiring from the police force. At this time, he was a police sergeant, so his retirement was effective December of 2007. So I imagine he probably didn't just do this for no reason. It probably wasn't a coincidence. It was probably that they were sort of pushing him to retire. You know, you better retire before we wind up having to fire you. Maybe, you know. Or just in case something comes out in this, it's not going to look good, you could get fired, maybe you should retire. So the Bolingbrook Police Pension Board voted to allow Peterson to collect his pension, which I mentioned earlier. It would be $6,067 per month. And they stated that they had no option. They had to give him his pension because he had not committed any crime, or he had not been convicted of any crime. So he deserved to get his pension at this point. So something very strange happened right around this time. Peterson's stepbrother, Thomas Morphy, a guy who had a history of drug and alcohol addiction, he attempted suicide 2 days after allegedly helping Peterson carry a warm blue plastic barrel from Peterson's house into his SUV. So here's the thing. This guy, Thomas, feared that he had unknowingly helped dispose of Stacy's body. Like, he did not know what was in the barrel at all. And neighbors reported seeing Peterson and another man carrying a barrel large enough to hold a body out of the house around the time of the disappearance. Nobody could find this barrel, though. And in addition to just the barrel carrying, Thomas went on to explain that he had been contacted by Drew before doing this. And Drew said he needed his help. They went together to a Starbucks. They got drinks. It was captured on CCTV. Their time at Starbucks, okay? Then Drew told him that Stacy was cheating on him with this guy named Scott. Now, Scott was an old friend of Stacy's, that he had seen them together out in town. He did not know for a fact that they were cheating, okay? He just felt they might be. And I don't know if they were or they weren't, but it doesn't matter. So he was saying, this guy Scott is cheating with my wife and I'm gonna catch them and whatever. And so Thomas thought he was going to be like helping Drew out to deal with this Scott guy. Okay, that's what he thought was going on. So he drove Thomas to a park and he gave him his cell phone. He gave him Drew's. Drew gave Tom Drew's cell phone to hold. Okay, hold my cell phone. I'm gonna go drive to Scott's house. I'm going to, sit in the car outside of his house, and I'm gonna call you from Stacy's phone. Okay, and you answer it. So he was gonna be setting up some legitimate cell phone records this way, So that's what he did. He left him at the park. He drove to the Scott guy's house, called. Tom answered the phone. Then he went back and he picked up Thomas, drove him to his own house, to Drew's house, and alibi for that night. On February 29th of 2004, Stacy claimed she woke up in the middle of the night to find that Drew was gone. He later came home and did some laundry, and then told her to lie to the police and say that he had been home with her all night. So when she was interviewed by the Bolingbrook police, Drew sat with her the whole time while she was interviewed, and she gave him the alibi that he asked for. Now that Stacy was missing under strange circumstances, Kathleen Savio's family insisted that there had been foul play in her death. And on November 16th of 2007, Kathleen's body was exhumed and underwent forensic examination. And the new autopsy was performed by a former New York City medical examiner. And he concluded that yes, she died of drowning, so there had been water in the tub. But she had drowned following a struggle when her body was placed in the bathtub. So she had been beaten and then put into the bathtub to drown. When she was in such bad shape, she couldn't get out, So photos showed extensive bruising and scraping to her back, torso, and face, as well as a large, unexplained gash in her scalp. Now, I have to say, this is just me. How did the previous coroner miss all that? Seriously, how? I mean, he couldn't have. And I understand camaraderie amongst police officers, but where do you draw the line? You have this woman who is clearly beaten, severely beaten, and you say, oh, she just drowned in the tub, that's all accident. Even if you wanted to say she just fell and hit her head on the tub and then drowned, this is more than that. Like, come on now. Anyway, the state's attorney, whose name was James Glasgow, later announced that a pathologist had determined that Kathleen Savio's death was a homicide, not an accident. But no arrests were made. I mean, they have that, but they don't have anything to tie anyone to it. Right? So the media was all over this situation, and they started following Drew everywhere. They camped out at his house like 24 hours a day, like tons of them. And he tried to act like he was annoyed, but he was loving it. He was oftentimes smiling, telling jokes. One time he went outside with his own camcorder and started filming them and joking around like, hey, how do you like me filming you? But it was all a big joke. And meanwhile, Stacy is still missing. Okay, so right now we're talking about Kathleen Savio, but Stacy is missing, and they haven't gotten any closer to finding her. So now, on January 23rd, 2008, Peterson and his lawyer, Joel Brodsky, called into a Chicago radio show hosted by Steve Dahl. And Steve Dahl had been joking around a lot on his show about Peterson since the case began. And obviously, Drew and his lawyer both think this is a huge and she's been murdered. We don't know by who. Let's have a dating game and put you on it. Yeah, that's brilliant. So funny. Well, I guess the radio managers and the host himself talked about it and decided not to go through with it. I guess it would be in poor taste. Now, in December of 2008, Peterson got engaged. Can you imagine thinking you want to marry this man? She was 23-year-old Christina Rains. She would have been his fifth wife. But just about a month or two later, she moved out of his house at her father's insistence. He was like, "No way are you marrying that man. Look at what might happen to you." So she explained that she had come to her senses and that the engagement was just a publicity stunt designed to keep Peterson in the media spotlight. Why did he need to be in the media spotlight? For what? Just because it's fun? What is fun about that? Yeah, that's a publicity stunt because he wanted people to be saying, what, a fifth person is going to marry this guy? Okay. Finally, on May 7th, 2009, he was indicted by a Will County grand jury, and he was arrested for the murder of Kathleen Savio. Nothing about Stacy, okay? Bail was set at $20 million, which he could not come up with. And then in July of 2010, a judge ruled that Peterson would have to remain in jail for the remainder of his trial and appeals process because he would pose a danger if released. So, meaning, if Drew could wind up coming up with the bail money, that wasn't going to be okay. So no more bail. You got to stay here in jail. His minor children went into the custody of one of his adult children. So the first two children that he had with the first wife, they were adults by now. Now, there was a situation where, like, the things that Stacy had told people, that's hearsay, right? Like, she told her pastor that, she lied for him. Like, everything she told people is hearsay, and she can't come to court to say it herself because she has disappeared conveniently. But they made a new law just for this, called Drew's Law, passed by the Illinois State Legislature, which allowed Stacy's statements to friends and family into the trial. Drew's Law permits courts to consider statements from unavailable witnesses, provided that prosecutors are able to prove that the witness was killed to prevent his or her testimony, and that the hearsay statements are reliable. Okay, so the trial began in July of 2012. And in addition to the hearsay from Stacy that was presented, another witness came forward, a former co-worker of Drew Peterson named Jeff Patcher. He took the stand and said that Peterson offered him $25,000 another prisoner who was trying to get some of his belongings, some of Drew's belongings, to sell on eBay. Anyway, he appealed numerous times, but the conviction was upheld. And on February 9th of 2015, he was charged with attempting to put a hit on James Glasgow, the lead prosecutor in his murder trial. The inmate who he was trying to hire to do it tipped off prosecutors to the plan, and he wore a wire to capture Drew talking about the plan. And it worked. He talked about it, and it was recorded. In May of 2016, he was found guilty of solicitation of murder and solicitation of murder for hire, and he was sentenced to an additional 40 years in prison. Now, side note, why 38 years for murder and 40 years for attempted solicitation of murder? Why? Okay. In December of 2019, Peterson was released from federal custody and transferred to a state facility outside of Illinois, and they were keeping his location a secret for security reasons. But that didn't last long at all, because in October of 2021, he filed a petition which alleged that state's attorney James Glasgow had intimidated witnesses during his murder trial. And this petition stated that he was being held at the Indiana State Prison in Michigan City, Indiana, at that time. Now, he may or may not still be there, so don't go looking for him. In 2022, Drew Peterson's former lawyer, Joel Brodsky, you know, the guy who tried to get him on the radio to be in a dating game, that guy, he began considering the release of confidential information protected by attorney-client privilege, but he was put under a continued gag order not to disclose anything that Drew Peterson had shared with him in confidentiality. Why would he think that he could just, share that information, whether he wanted to or not? Now, the thing is, it is unclear what he actually does know, but he said, quote, "I know everything about both of his wives, everything. I feel bad about Drew still not taking responsibility and Stacy still being missing. I'm thinking about maybe revealing what happened to Stacy and where she is," end quote. And by the way, up until right now, Stacy is still missing. And that is the case. What are your thoughts? I will share some of mine. First of all, rest in peace to Kathleen, Savio. And although I don't know for sure if Stacy Peterson is alive or dead, I'm fairly certain that she is no longer with us, and for that reason, I will wish that she also rests in peace. My heart goes out to all the children of Drew Peterson, and specifically the ones who lost their mothers. How incredibly awful for all of them, what they've been through, what I'm sure they are still going through. And imagine that somebody cared so little about the well-being of their children that they would do something to harm the mothers of these children. his possessions. And when he was done with them, or when they were no longer serving him well, he could easily just dispose of them and move on. It didn't matter. It's all a big joke. And do I think that Stacy is missing because A, she wanted a divorce, or B, she was gonna tell on what he did to Kathleen? I'd say both. The fact that she wanted a divorce signified that she was gonna spill that information, so yeah. So let's talk about the Bolingbrook police force. Here's what I have to say about them. Shame on them. What the heck? And I'm using nice language because it's YouTube. How in the world could they allow all this to go on? Like, it doesn't matter that he was a police officer and he worked with them. So what? I understand for minor things, you know, but for starting out with just domestic violence, that's terrible. Like, you see this woman is getting beaten up and you just gonna side with him because you work with him. You know, that's terrible. But okay, alright, you know, maybe you believe him saying, oh, she did this, she did that, she pushed me to it, okay, fine. Not fine, but alright. But when you see that this woman has been murdered, and you know that it is not an accidental death, because clearly it wasn't, clear as day, you're gonna just look the other way because he's a police officer. Come on now. That's absurd. I am sure there are policemen out there, anyone out there who is a police officer who is watching, I'm sure you agree with me that is definitely where you draw the line. When your coworker, a fellow police officer, commits something as heinous as this, you do not just look the other way because he's your buddy and because it's like, you know, just the way it's done in the police station. We watch everyone's back. No. The police are there to protect and serve society, not hide each other's murders. So, I think I have said enough. So I will leave it there. Thank you so much.